Welcome to the Geek Cheek podcast, where new year, new you, same old BJ. I'm Void. I'm here with my co-host BJ.
Here.
You're here. Maybe you're not same or old, but you're definitely still here.
I'm old.
Okay.
I'm old. I turn 37 tomorrow, so I've hit that point where I'm officially, well, as they're listening to it, it's my birthday, so hey, happy birthday. But I've hit that point where I'm officially in my late 30s at 37. There's not even mid-30s anymore. It's just there, so I'm old now. I'm officially old. Officially middle-aged, and it's like, ha-ha!
Welcome. Way to ring in the new year.
Same old beach. Yep, exactly.
So we're back. We're here. It's another season, which is always weird. So if you've never listened before, you would think the first episode of a season is a good place to jump on, but this one usually isn't representative. Maybe go back one or two, maybe go forward one or two. Fair warning up front. But if you want to start here, we basically catch up because we have both been not recording for like 2.5 weeks, almost 3 weeks at this point. So we just have a bunch of stuff we've been doing. And this year, we identified a couple of things that we're actually going to break off into their own episodes, either later in January or maybe even into February. So, like, I watched The Watchmen, and I have a lot of thoughts, and you've read it, and now I'm going back to reread the comic, and you said you want to watch the show, so we'll probably do an episode on that in a while, so I'm just going to wait on that. I've been playing a ton of Xbox Games Pass games, and I have a lot of thoughts about Games Pass now that I've spent, like, a good month with it. We're going to do an episode on that.
And you've played a lot on that. If you like, you've played, it's a Gamefly episode basically, like we used to do. It's a ton of games that you've worked through.
Yeah, I basically played everything on it on Xbox that I haven't played in the past. So there was a lot there, and I just have a lot of thoughts about it. So, like I said, we broke off stuff like that, like Rise of Skywalker. We're going to hold off there because we both have a ton of thoughts. Those will be more episodes later. So this is kind of like everything else, all the smaller geekery stuff that has built up over the last like 3-ish weeks while we've been gone, basically.
Yeah, and it's weird looking at yours. Like, yours is so full of stuff, and I realized that I really did take this break, this Christmas break with PTO, but I really did take this break off. I didn't play nearly as many games as I thought I would. I didn't like sit and just watch oodles of TV or anything at all. It's like I was just chilling, and it was awesome. But I did stuff, obviously. So yeah, it's going to be cool to catch up.
Yeah, let's get into it. So we kind of organized it into different sections. So I'm kind of interested because you said games. You didn't really do a whole lot.
Not really, no. I didn't really play any real games. Jennifer got Untitled Goose Game for Christmas. I got her that as a stocking stuffer, actually. I went to Target and got the little card so I could put it in her stocking. And so she was excited about that, and I watched her play that, and she loved it. But really, what I've been playing, and it's almost embarrassing, but also, like, I've had such a good time with it, is I've been playing Marvel Strike Force and Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, those stupid little arena battler games. I really, really love these right now, and I've been having so much fun just building up my squads and like leveling up Thrawn and the Emperor, and they've introduced things in both of them where you can like work better towards specific characters and like legendary characters you want to unlock and go through these different things. It's just been fun for me. So my spare time for gaming has just been opening up my phone and playing through and collecting characters. But like, I haven't played Dragon Quest games. I haven't really even played anything on the Switch. I got Pokemon Sword for Christmas, but I haven't even taken the shrink wrap off of it because I just haven't had the desire to play anything like long form.
Yeah, and I mean, I played a bunch, especially like Games Pass. I tried a lot, but sometimes you just need that level of mindlessness, right? Like there's the ones you're talking about, they take a little bit of engagement, but they don't take your whole brain power, and sometimes that's kind of what you need.
And that's kind of where I am with it. Like, that's exactly what it is. It's not something that I have to really concentrate on, but I have to pay attention enough to be, I need to play this, or I can do this, or just achieve this goal. And like, I do raids and weird like territory battles with guilds that I'm in. I talk to people on here, but it's not something that I have to really concentrate on or can't just click shut whenever I need to do something else.
That makes sense.
Even more so than Switch games and things like that.
Yeah, but you did do movies, you did shows and stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. What were you watching this break? Because usually you dig through a ton. Like, where did ours line up? Like, what movies and stuff did you end up seeing other than Star Wars?
Yeah,
I mean, of course, there's Star Wars.
So we both have thoughts about that. We'll hold them for another episode, another day. But besides that, I kind of caught up on a bunch of movies that were middle grade or bad, or I didn't watch all of, and a bunch of shows that I had on my list to try out, and they didn't stick. So the things that did stick were like Watchmen, which again, I think there's enough there that we want to actually talk about it more in depth, so I'll wait. But the one show that I wanted to highlight, because it was really good, and I hadn't heard a whole lot about it, was Undone. And it's an Amazon original. I'd seen it advertised, but I'd like just never clicked on it because all the advertising is kind of weird. The style of the show is strange. It's this like late 20s slice of life. It's about it's strange in the way that like Fleabag is strange, where you can't really describe it. It's not exactly like Fleabag. It's not exactly that, but it's like late 20s slice of life. It has stuff around mental health, but then it goes into like time travel and nonlinear time and culture and family and relationships, and it manages to do so many things all within this kind of like construct of just being like daily life. But then also, is it really? And the main character starts questioning whether she's having mental health issues or whether she's actually like tapping into seeing things that are beyond what most people see. And that's kind of this like middle ground that the show lives in. It's really, really good, and it's really, really stylized. And I watched that thing through in, I think, one night because it just totally hooked me.
Oh, wow. Like, how many seasons are there at this point?
There's just one season, and all of the episodes are like 30 minutes. So it's not a huge ask. I think it's like somewhere in the 7 to 10 episode range. It's not gigantic, but I liked it a lot. And it's this strange style where, I don't know if it's strange. It's cool in the end once you adjust to it. They have real actors, and you can tell they're really acting, and they have like sets and everything that they've done. But then they go and they like animate over it. And so you never actually see the actor, but you can recognize them. Like, they're recognizable actors, but they've been animated over the top. Like, if you just Google Undone Amazon, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It's this kind of strange style.
That's exactly what I did when you started, and I see the animation style. I've seen trailers for this in front of other Amazon stuff, and so when I saw this, like, oh yeah, that show, it looks super cool. I'd forgotten about it, but yeah, the animation, I guess it is animated, I suppose, where it looks like it's cel shaded almost over the actors, and but yeah, it looks super cool. That this is one, if it's actually that good, I'll have to check out too. I guess once I get done with Watchmen.
Yeah, and the first episode is just kind of like a slice of life, and I wasn't quite sure what it was doing. You definitely have to watch the second episode to even really understand the premise, so keep that in mind. But I recommend that one. I like that one a lot. And then the other thing that I see you also saw was Frozen 2.
Yes. And how did I want to know how you felt about it before I even say anything. I haven't even looked at your notes on this one. So I'm really curious on Frozen 2 for you from a dad's perspective.
I didn't make any notes. I think I just wrote down Frozen 2 because I liked it. And usually if I'm not like over the moon about a movie and I don't hate it and I just kind of like it, I don't have as many thoughts, and that's where it's landing for me. It was really good. And I think the main difference between like Frozen 2 and Frozen is that the first movie had a lot of things that were they're catchy, and they were kind of earwormy, and they were almost like that Disney sing-along style where by the time you get to the end of hearing a song, you feel like you know all of the song and you could immediately sing it, right?
Yes. Yes, I know exactly what you mean.
And Frozen 2 feels like the music is excellent, and in a way the music is better, but it's not sing-alongable, it's not catchy, it's more like a musical, like a Broadway type musical where the music is telling a story, it's like narrative. So I liked it a lot, and I walked out of there and I was like, wow, that was really good music. And then I was like, I don't actually remember any of the music. I don't think I could sing it. I don't think I could sing even a phrase from it. So on the way home, we started listening to the soundtrack, and I was like, yeah, this is really good. It's just not quite as catchy. And that's kind of where I landed with it. It was great. I loved it. I think it adds a lot to the world. If you liked Frozen, I completely recommend Frozen 2. But the music is different.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I landed on it too. I didn't know if having kids who had seen Frozen and probably hit that kind of like little kid watch this over and over and over and over and over and over and over again thing like so many kids did would change it. But for me, seeing it, it's like I do like this one better than the first one. That the more I've thought about it, I really want to see this one again. I can't wait for it to be on Disney Plus to be able to watch. And I fell exactly into where you were with the music. It's not nearly nearly as catchy. It's not nearly as memorable as far as the just being sing along when you're out, or the kids like becoming obsessed with Let It Go or anything, but they're far more meaningful. They tell such a story and characterize these characters, and they are incredibly complex, both thematically and musically. Like, I can't sing any of the melodies to any of these songs, like you said, but The Next Right Thing, that particular song is deep. Like, it hits on like mental illness and overcoming grief, stuff that I've had to work on with my counselor, like really taking that right next step that Anna sings about. And it's like, my goodness, they're putting this in a Disney musical, and this is really intense stuff that like it took a lot of wherewithal to be able to come to grips with in counseling sessions. It's like they did a lot with this movie, and it really seems like they're moving from the kind of movie that the kids at that age latched onto with the first one. Like, this is made for those kids, where it's dealing with becoming more mature and the things that come up, and things not always being, you know, good and evil, and maybe sometimes you have to make a choice, and the right choice isn't always going to turn out okay. And I love that they did that with Frozen, of all of their franchises, because there's so much that they can do. I feel like they pulled their punch a little bit at the end of the movie from some of the stuff they were working up to, but I get it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's darker. I'm glad that they didn't go as dark as they could have towards the end of the movie, but it worked. It worked really well. And like you said, it's deeper and it's a lot more impactful. It's just not as catchy.
Yeah, and which I think makes it better overall, because I always felt that I love the first Frozen. I felt that it was always missing just a little bit of something to make it coherent. Not coherent, to make it cohesive. And I think this movie nailed that part. I think it got the cohesion right where they need to be able to tell stories in this world.
Yeah, it was really good. Well, and you said you also watched Knives Out, which I didn't realize was a Rian Johnson movie until you told me that. But I've heard a ton of buzz around it. So did you like it? Was it good?
It's amazing.
Okay.
It is probably the best movie that I saw this break. Like, as much as I love Frozen 2 and as much stuff as I have to say about it, obviously, Knives Out, you can't say anything about without spoiling, because it's like Clue. It's a murder mystery, and it's just super weird and pulpy, but Rian Johnson knocks it out of the park on this one. The cast is amazing. I thought that it was going to be super weird with like Daniel Craig doing this really deep South accent, and it's not. Like, you fall right in, like, this is the world, this is the tone, and it's just fun to watch. Chris Evans, Captain America, is in it, and he's just brilliant. The main character, the character who you see the narrative through her eyes, is just magnificently cast in just how she portrays it. Like, I think it is by far my favorite Rian Johnson movie. And I really like all of his movies. And I think the only one I haven't seen, I can't even remember the name of it now off the top of my head, but there's only one, I believe, that he's directed I haven't seen. And of the ones that I have, this, I think, is by far his like best overall.
That's awesome. I got to go see it. I like his movies. I didn't even realize that I really enjoyed his movies until I watched The Last Jedi. And then I went and I looked him up, and then I saw, oh, these movies that I had liked already were by him. I just never put it together.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's the way a lot of people were and are, where they're like, he's not a household name. He's not like J.J. Abrams, or he's not Steven Spielberg, or someone who you've probably just heard talked about a lot. But it's when you see these movies, like, oh yeah, that movie was really good.
Yeah, exactly.
And turns out that it was Rian Johnson. So yeah, Knives Out is great.
And you were watching Lois and Clark, it looks like.
Yeah,
it's a little bit of a throwback.
Actually, a little bit of a throwback, like 30 years or something, not too bad. Lois and Clark is The New Adventures of Superman. It was a TV show that came on in the 90s, and it was my first real introduction to Superman. Like, it was everything back then. I loved it, but Jennifer loved it more than I did, and she has always been obsessed with it. Like, Lois made her want to be an investigative reporter. Like, she started going into journalism and stuff like that in college because of wanting to be an investigative journalist through all of this, because of how much Lois and Clark like impacted her. And like, it's still good. I got her the DVD sets for Christmas. That was one of the things she really wanted, and so I got her, and we've been watching it. We finished the first season, and it mostly holds up. I mean, you have to know that it is a kind of ridiculous comic booky 90s superhero romantic comedy, but it actually holds up, and the characters are fun. And like, I didn't think I was going to want to watch it like every night when we settle in. It's like, oh, what are we going to watch now? It's like, I actively want to watch Lois and Clark, and last night was the first night that we didn't watch more than one episode, and because Jennifer was sick, and it was weird that we only watched one episode. Like, it's super entertaining. It's silly and quirky, don't get me wrong, but Dean Cain is always going to be my Superman.
I loved that show. I didn't think about it until you mentioned it, and I saw it in the show notes for this one, but like, I watched that in the 90s, and it was fantastic at the time.
You should totally go back and watch part of it. Like, I know that it's on the DC streaming service. Like, we found that out after we actually bought the DVDs, but that doesn't have the special features, and the special features are actually really interesting too. Because like, it's this thing from our childhood that we love so much, and now as adults we're going back, experiencing it, seeing that it actually does hold up and is entertaining, and then seeing behind the scenes stuff that's a retrospective after these sets came out years and years later. So it's really, really interesting, and you should totally go watch part of it. Like, it's totally quirky. Like, you know exactly what you're getting into when you watch it, but I never thought about it being a romantic comedy before. And when Jennifer told me that, I was like, it totally is. Like, Superman is not at all the focus of this show. It actually is Lois and Clark and the people behind it, and that's what makes it good. Like, so much of this is because it hits those genre conventions of romantic comedy.
I'm glad you're liking it so much, even though you're coming back to it after a while off.
Yeah.
Do I dare ask about your All Access Premium membership? I'm kind of scared.
I also got Jennifer a 1-year All Access pass. Well, a 1-year premium membership to the Dr. Pimple Popper All Access. That is, YouTube doesn't let people actually make a whole lot of money anymore for creators. There's a lot going on. I'm sure everybody out there has heard it. Like, there's weird things going on for like people who've been doing this for a while, the way the algorithms work, blah, 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 blah. And like, premium membership content is really starting to come up, and they haven't been putting good pimple popping videos on YouTube nearly as often, and she started an all access membership, and so we've been watching we subscribed to Dr. Pimple Popper All Access, and I bought her a Chromecast so that she could cast it to the TV and not have to just watch it through the app on her phone. So that's also part of what we've been doing at night since Christmas.
Kind of sweet and kind of gross.
It's yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay. I did a bunch over break. Like I said, some of it got to be so long in these show notes that I broke it off into other episodes. So we'll talk about those another week. But before I get into like the kind of normal stuff we talk about, the new project, I've had some people ask me about it. So I know I talked about it on one of the episodes when we were out. I don't remember which one. But Katie and I are going to do a Disney podcast that releases weekly. And we're going to work through the backlog of every Disney movie ever. And maybe more. So it's a huge project. And it's been super fun. We've been recording like 2 episodes, and we record it like every other week. So it's going to end up being 1 episode every week. The thing is, I did this through a new host, which I think is going to be really good in the end. But the downside is that it made the iTunes approval process take way longer than the other times I've done podcast stuff. So we're waiting for the approval still after submitting it like 3.5 weeks ago. So,
oh my goodness, that's longer than I've ever had it take.
I know, it's crazy. So we are waiting. As soon as it's approved, I will let everybody know on all of the channels. And what we're going to do is we're going to release 2 episodes a week until we catch up, because Katie and I are still recording every single week, or enough to fill up 1 a week, basically. So for the first maybe month or 2, we're going to have like twice weekly releases just to get people into it. And because we have this backlog that we're sitting on. So that's something that I've been doing over break. I'm super excited for people to start listening to it, because it's been a really fun project to do.
Like, I'm really excited to listen to this show, and I know that you, with the host and everything, it's going to have that learning curve and everything. So I'm excited to see how you feel about that host as well, and how some of the features work out for you on that podcast that maybe we can integrate into this one.
We'll try it. I'm definitely trying some new things, so it'll be good in the end. But yeah, I mean, I played a bunch of games. A lot of them were on Game Pass, but I also tried to get back to reading, just because after you and I did our end of the year episodes, I hadn't realized how little I read last year until we did that. So I really made sure that I read some books, and some of these were audiobooks, some of them were reading books. But I read the 2 Star Wars books that I've been kind of sitting on or picking away at. So Force Collector was okay, but it was very fan servicey. It didn't add a whole lot, but it was kind of a good revisit of some flashbacks and things that we already know. And then Galaxy's Edge Black Spire, it was okay, but not great. It was probably longer than it needs to be, but it was a really good primer on the setting of Batuu, which is where the Star Wars Disney theme park takes place. And that theme park is canon, if you guys don't know. So there's a specific day in the universe, in the Star Wars timeline, that is basically just repeating at that theme park. So every time you go to that theme park, you're experiencing one day of Star Wars canon, and there's a bunch of like hidden stories going on, which is super cool. So now I have the background about Batuu and about the location, and I just know more about that. So it was good for world building. The book itself was just it was all right.
And the Batuu is also a world that they've explored in other books. I know that the second Thrawn novel takes place partly on Batuu, that they have Black Spire as one of the towns that they're dealing with during some of the parallel narratives. So I think that may have been where it was introduced. It was at least where I learned about it first.
Yeah, they started trying to work it into the lore once they knew it was going to be at a theme park. So that's pretty sweet. Besides that, I also read Dan Carlin, The End is Always Near, and this was one I listened to because I like his podcasts, and this is him in book form. It was good. It was like an extended podcast, basically, but it was all about the end of civilization and what that can mean. And so some of it was about like the fall of Rome, and then other stuff was about like how disease and like plagues and stuff can wipe people out, and then some of it was about thermonuclear war and like the Cold War and what could happen in the future. So it was this good mix of things, but it was really about the end is always near. Like no matter what kind of civilization you're in, there's a way that it could end. So it's kind of a terrifying book, but it was also super interesting, and I liked it a lot.
I'm glad. That sounds really, really interesting, and I might have to check that out from the library and listen to.
Yeah, it was great. I read Sword and Pen by Rachel Kane, and this is the finale of the Great Library series.
Oh, I did not know it was done now.
It is. So it finished up near the end of last year, and I just didn't notice it until I went back and I started looking through like authors and books that I needed to catch up on. So it came out sometime in like the last half of last year, but you and I just weren't reading as much last year. So
no, I'm the same way as you, where last year I barely read at all, honestly, and like I'm still reading one of the books I started last year, but I didn't even think about books that I was doing. I have been reading The Burning White still by Brent Weeks. You need to get to that one too. Like
it's on my list. No idea. It was literally the next one on my list, and then I realized that because I needed to get back into reading, I needed to build more momentum, and that's a big book. So
it's like. Yeah, it's taken me forever
I can probably
to get through.
read that book over break, or I can read like 5 others, and I chose to read 5 others instead because I needed to get some momentum going. So I'll get back around to it.
I cannot blame you.
Yeah. But Sword and Pen was really good. The Great Library series is really good. I still recommend starting with the first one. If you look for the Great Library series, you'll find it. Is it Ash and Bone, Ink and Quill? They're all 2 words, and they all blend together at this point.
It's Ink and Bone is the first one, I believe.
I would believe you if you said anything right now.
Anything. Oh, I am hilarious. But no, I can never remember the names of any of the others of them, but I'm pretty sure, I'm like 90% certain it's Ink and Bone. And I'm not looking it up just because I'm just saying it.
Yeah, and this is the 4th one. It's the finale. It really feels like she probably wanted to make book 3 and 4 together, but the conclusion turned into such an epic thing that it had to become its own book, and that's what this one is. So if you haven't read the Great Library series, now would be a great time to go back and start because they all flow so nicely into each other, and you can do the whole series, and it's only 4 books. It's not like 14 or anything.
Yeah, 4 books is okay. I'm okay with that when people extend it. 5 is the absolute max, and I'm really, really glad that Brent Weeks actually extended the Lightbringer series into 5 as opposed to a trilogy. But yeah, once it starts getting over that and they just keep adding on when it's supposed to be a shorter series, that they've set it out to be a shorter series, that's when it can get really tedious. But 4 for a book like that, and with YA especially, where they're fairly quick reads, it's great. It's fine.
Yeah, and it was a pretty quick read. I mean, I bet you could read the entire series in the time that it'll take you to read that one Brent Weeks book.
I don't doubt it. Like, it is, it's 964 pages if I remember right, and I'm almost done. I think I'm like 85% through.
Yeah, and so the other one, the last one that I finished over break, besides Watchmen, but again, we'll talk about that at a different time. I listened to it, and that's important because I don't know if I would have gotten through this one if I tried to read it, but it's called This Is How You Lose the Time War, and it's about 2 agents from opposite sides of a time war, and it's them exchanging letters across the different time streams and across the different like threads of reality, and they show up in all sorts of places. So it's not like physical letters, but they like store them in the strangest places that like I couldn't even do it justice if I tried to make it up off the top of my head. But once it gets interpreted, it becomes like a letter, and then they read it, and it's from the other person's perspective. So they're always reading the letter from the other person. And you learn about the setting through the letters and not directly. I don't think I would have liked this if I had to read it as a book, but it's great as an audiobook because it's the kind of prose that and the tone of it that you need to just like not turn off your brain, but you need to let it flow over you and not worry about any individual word and just kind of understand that you'll pick up the meaning. Do you know what I mean? There's certain writing styles like that.
That's kind of how I feel about Cormac McCarthy. I cannot read his books, but audiobooks of Cormac McCarthy books are great. Like, I love listening to them. Like The Road is fantastic in audiobook. Cannot read that book in prose. Then there's also I can't remember it. The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger. It is one of my favorite books of all time. I don't like reading it because it's an epistolary novel like that. Well, not really epistolary like the one that you're describing where it's letters back and forth. It's an oral history kind of. Different characters narrate different perspectives, or different characters narrate different chapters from their own perspectives, and without the audiobook it gets more tedious, but they have really good narrative and really good actors doing it. So listening in books like that where it is changing perspective helps so much.
Yeah, so This Is How You Lose the Time War is a high recommendation for me if you get the Audible version. Like, go listen to it, don't read it, because I don't think it would be as good if you tried to read it.
Did you say that you tried to read it, or if it's just one where you're...
It was just one that, listening to it, I could tell I probably wouldn't have been able to sit down and read it in book form. And it's short.
Gotcha.
It's like I think it's a novella, because it's only like 4 hours, somewhere in that range. Okay. So it's a pretty quick one.
Cool. And speaking of that, I did see on Discord just a little bit ago while I was waiting to record, there is apparently a challenge on Audible that between now when we're recording this on January 7th and March 3rd, if you complete 3 audiobooks on Audible that are over 3 hours long each, you'll get a $20 Amazon gift card. So this is a really good one to do, apparently.
Sweet.
You can check our Discord. It's in the like Save Money Deals channel, but it was pretty cool. And you saying that 5 hours reminded me, I was like, oh, that would be a good one to do that and get $20.
Yeah, it'd be a really good one. And so I did some games. Like I said, most of the gaming I did was Games Pass. But outside of Games Pass, I tried Divinity Original Sin 2 again. I gave it another like real shot. And the other times I've tried Divinity Original Sin or 2, I played it for like half an hour and I just bounced off of it hard. But I've heard so many good things. And, I've been listening to a lot of the like Games of the Decade podcasts. And there are enough people that love this one where I really needed to go give it a try. So I played probably 5 or 6 hours of this. And in the end, I came away just wishing that I liked isometric RPGs more than I do. I really tried it and I just couldn't get into it. And it's a little too fiddly, and the camera perspective just makes me feel disconnected from the characters. I can tell there's like good stuff underneath that. I just wanted it to be streamlined. I wanted to be more in the story. I didn't want to be so up and away from it, which is always what I run into with these games. So I should probably stop trying them. But maybe someday an isometric RPG will come along and capture my heart. We'll see. It wasn't this one.
One day I hope that too. Like, I have the same problem that you do, where it's just I feel as though I'm not engaged with the world when it's an isometric RPG like this. And it's sad because like my friend Adam is super into the Torchlight games right now. He just discovered those and is really, really having a good time. And it looks really cool. I've watched him play it. It's like, yeah, that would be a lot of fun. I know that the moment that I tried it, I would get bored. It's just like, yep. It's not the kind of game that I would play. Love sitting and watching people play them, though.
Yeah. So that was one of them. I also tried Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, which is all in caps. It's Tabs, if you've ever seen that. That's what the game is actually called. I think it's just called Tabs. And it was free on the Epic Store for a day. It's a really fun sandbox if you can get it for like free or under $5. It might still be in early access technically. The actual levels and like trying to beat the levels and stuff, that was okay. But the fun of it is you can like put like a ghoul up against a woolly mammoth, or you could do like it's that game where you can generate like an army on one side of peasant farmers and an army on the other side of like scarecrows. Like you just throw them against each other and see what happens. Gotcha. And it's fun. Yep. So that was okay.
That kind of thing is ridiculous, but yeah, you spend some time on it and that would be fun.
Yeah, and I wouldn't put a lot of money into it, but somewhere in the like $0 to $5 range, that's about right for that game. So I had a fun afternoon with it. And then I went back to Mario Maker 2 because they released Zelda in it. You can become, well, not Zelda, but you can become Link and actually have like 8-bit Link's moves in it. So people were making levels around that. And it didn't actually make me get hooked on Mario Maker 2 again. It just makes me want them to do a Zelda Maker. Maybe they'll do that at some point, hopefully.
Which is probably what they're working toward with this, maybe. I mean, it might be an experiment to see how people react to it and what kind of content they're making. I mean, Nintendo this is now the second thing Nintendo has done to experiment with that, where they've done the Zelda Link's Awakening dungeon put together thingy-mabobber and this. So looks like they may be moving in that direction somehow.
Yeah, it's very possible, and I would be here for it. I would definitely play a Zelda Maker if they did that. They've shown enough promise there that like I would buy it day one. The other game that I have to call out is A Short Hike, and it's the one game that I always say that I try to catch up on games that I may have missed because I listen to End of the Year podcast. I listen to, this time it's been Games of the Decades podcast, which we might do our own version of that sometime in the next month. But A Short Hike is one that I had never heard of at all. And I didn't hear it widely spread, but a few people that I trust on a few podcasts and on a few sites mentioned A Short Hike. And I was like, okay, I got to give it a look just because the people who are saying it and how much they like it make me think that I might like it. And it is the most delightful game that I played in 2019. This is the only one that I regret not having finished before our Games of the Year podcast. So,
oh, wow.
And I don't know if it would have made my top 5, but it would have made an honorable mention without a doubt. Like, there's no doubt in my mind at all around that one. It is.
And you messaged me about this and said that Jennifer would probably like this because it's very similar in theme and style to like Journey, wasn't it?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I could make that comparison. It's kind of like. It's an organic exploration game, right? The style of it is somewhere kind of near Animal Crossing, but it has this unique spin on it. Like it has 3D characters, but it has this pixelated filter over the whole thing that really works for the art style that they've done. And it's almost like Journey, where it's really just like you start the game and it's like the whole objective is you're waiting for a cell phone call. And you're staying with your aunt for, I don't know, it's kind of implied that you're like there with her for a couple weeks or for the summer or something, on this island. And she's like, oh, we don't really get cell phone reception here at the house. You got to go up to the top of the peak. And she's like, I've been up there plenty of times. You can do it. It's kind of like a family tradition. Like people who stay there end up doing that hike right up to the peak.
All right.
And you're this kind of like penguin bird-esque thing. It's very Animal Crossing-y in the look and feel of it. And the whole game is just, you just got to get to the top of the mountain. But as you start walking, you start to like run into other animals and start to meet people around the island. And then there are different paths that diverge, and sometimes they're labeled well and sometimes they're not labeled well. And so you might wander off for a while and explore over here, and wander off for a while and explore over there, and then find someone who needs help. And the thing you can do is you don't have to interact with any of the other characters, and you can try to mainline it straight there. It really, the only game mechanic that you have to like do a little bit of is you have to acquire these feathers that give you more climbing power or more flying power. And because you're a bird creature, you can flap a little bit and you can glide a little bit. But it's more, I don't know. It sits somewhere between, if this even makes sense in your head, put it somewhere between a 3D Mario game, Breath of the Wild, Animal Crossing, and Journey. Mash those games up and you have this game. And it was so fun. Like, the writing was fantastic throughout. I talked to everybody, and if you play this game, talk to them until you get repeat dialogue, because most of them actually have a bunch of dialogue, but you'll only get one at a time as you go up and talk to them. I loved it. Like, it was delightful. That's the word for the game, is delightful. Like, it was a perfect palate cleanser of a game. I think I beat it in 90 minutes start to finish, and I paid all of like $4 for it, and I would have gladly paid double or triple that for how much I enjoyed it. It's not a long game. It's a single session game. Like, you can just get it right now, play through it in the next 2 hours, and have a great time, and then you could be done with it. But I love this game. So A Short Hike, I have to call out because I liked it so much.
And for some reason, I'm thinking that as you're talking about it, that like, how does this compare to like Firewatch? For some reason, I'm feeling a Firewatch vibe from the description you have.
No, not as much, because you're not first person. It's third person action. You know, you're controlling this bird character that kind of is a platformer, kind of can climb, kind of can fly. I don't know. I don't know where this game fits. I just know that it was delightful and I loved it.
Fair enough. Like, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around it, and that last part you were talking about was like, maybe that's like Firewatch, but no. Okay, yeah, I'm just trying to parse it out. I need to play this. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think you'd like it. I think most people would like it. It's a great game. And then besides that, we were doing some more board games as a family, and we ended up picking up another one from the development group that made Arboretum, because we liked Arboretum.
Oh, awesome.
Because we liked Arboretum so much. It's called The Fox in the Forest, and it's a trick-taking game for 2 players. And if you know a trick-taking game, like, the basics are all here. The differences are that, like, even numbers are just numbered cards of a suit, and the odd number cards all have special powers on them. And so it's about taking tricks, and you either want a lot or almost none, but if you kind of fall in the middle of those two, you don't get as many points. And I don't know, it's really fun. A trick-taking game, anytime you talk about a card game like that, that's almost more traditional, it's kind of hard to explain. But if you have 2 players and you want something super easy to learn, something that's really easy to pick up and plays in like half an hour, and you're a fan of trick-taking games, The Fox in the Forest is a really, really good one. And my family's been playing it a lot.
That sounds really, really cool. That's something that I know Jennifer and I would like to play together, because we are always looking for fun games that we can play while... like, that aren't necessarily video games, that are just like 2-player board games or card games.
Yeah, and it's super lightweight. You know, the deck isn't super huge. Like, you could definitely like just fit this in your everyday carry bag and just have it with you too. So yeah. I always like that. You know, it's kind of the opposite of a giant board game. It's just a simple card game that you can carry with you.
Oh, and speaking of stuff like that reminds me, it's not a board game or anything like that, but I'd forgotten entirely that I actually bought the Jackbox, one of the Jackbox collections on Switch, and played it over New Year's Eve. That was one of the things we did. Like, there was some stuff where we actually had to set up the Switch on the table. We couldn't use the TV, so we actually did the Switch like they do in the commercials, and we were sitting around it at the kitchen table playing it with Austin and Grace, and it was really, really cool. It was one of those that I had never tried anything like that before, that particular brand of party game, but the Jackbox games are great. Like, some of them are hit and miss, but I was laughing so hard I was hurting. So I was glad we picked that one up too. I know that we will be getting more of those after having that one just raucous good time with it. So that reminded me of the Fox in the Forest, the way you're talking about how it was the same people who did it, as well as Jennifer and me looking for the same those kinds of games we can play together, because we could do the Jackbox ones like that too.
Yeah, it was super good. So that's probably it for this week. You guys, if you don't know, you can support the podcast at patreon.com/geek2geekcast. And around the network, we have tons of podcasts. We have a bunch of streamers. We have a Geekery blog. You can find all of it at geek2geekmedia.com/subscribe. And you probably know it by now because you guys have been listening for a while. But there's a lot of it, and it's all good stuff. And we're kind of in the process of remixing and relaunching a couple new things and slowing down on some other things. So we'll have more announcements on all of that soon, but there's a bunch of stuff in the works for the network, and there's a bunch of stuff that's ongoing. So the best place at the moment is to just go to geek2geekmedia.com and kind of see what's there.
It's true, and I'm working on getting things updated. There may be some things that are wishy-washy wonky every now and then, like in terms of, like, especially our content, the Geek to Geek podcast content there, but in terms of finding the show notes, but they're always in the podcast apps.
They're always, yep, for sure. So you guys can find us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter at geek2geekcast. We also have longer discussion threads on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
We also have great discussions on Slack and Discord. You can go to geek2geekmedia.com for invite links, and while you're there, make sure to check out all the other content on the network.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter.
I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's, and you can listen to me even more on the Dragon Quest FM podcast.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Say I'm the same.